Welcome to Make Games with No Money or Experience. I want to start by giving a shout out to Tom Francis, the inspiration for this series and the reason why I got into coding. This series is intended to help my students learn how to code games, but it can also be used to learn how to code games yourself. Feel free to take notes, skip anything you already understand, and repeat things you don't. To begin, we're going to dive into a clicker game, much like Cookie Clicker. It's an easy way to introduce GDScript and basic game controls. It also requires very little art, though, as you can see, many clicker games do have some art. From there, we'll move on to something a little bit harder. Start by downloading Godot, found on its website, godotengine.org. Godot is a free and open source game engine that is both exceptionally powerful and easy to approach. Download it, start the executable, and you're good to begin. I'm running Godot 3.1, and if there are any significant updates, I will update this video. When you start Godot, it opens the Project Manager. At the top, we have two tabs, the Project List and Templates. Templates are basically games and tests done by other people. They're good if you'd like to see how others have done things, but I caution against using code blindly. It's best to understand everything that you're doing. We're going to start off in the Project List tab. If this is your first time using Godot, this list will be empty. As you can see, I already have quite a few projects in here. Click New Project to start your new project. I'm going to name this My First Game, and I'm going to set the project path. In this case, I'm adding it to my thumb drive. So after you've got the folder that you want it in, if you haven't done that yet, just click Create Folder. Just leave the renderer at OpenGLES 3.0. For what we're doing, you probably won't notice the difference between 3.0 and 2.0, and we can always change it later. We're going to finish by clicking Create and Edit. And here's our blank project. It may seem a little bit daunting at first, lots of stuff on the screen here, but you'll quickly become familiar with the interface. The first thing we'll do is create a 2D scene, since our project will be in 2D. I'm not going to go over any true 3D design in these tutorials because it is exponentially more difficult to do as a beginner. So just click the 2D scene button under Create Root Node. Great. So, just as a general overview, we have our viewer in the center, which is where we can see any of our visual elements. It's also where we'll begin editing our scripts when we get to coding. To the bottom left is the file system. This shows you what is in the file we just created when we made the new project. Any elements we want to add to our project just need to be added to that file. No importing necessary. Godot does the rest for you. We'll go over that inspector a little later, but that's where we can view the properties of our game elements. Finally, we have the Scenes tab up here at the top, and don't worry about the Import tab now. The Scene tab is the meat of the program. So we're going to start by clicking the plus to open the Create New Node window. Godot works by organizing all its elements into nodes. Nodes can be containers, images, animations, paths, text, and plenty of other things. In general, red is 3D game stuff, green is interface, and blue is 2D game stuff. You also have white, which generally controls things under the hood. And there's a search bar at the top to find things quicker if you need it. Now, I just want to make something that'll actually do something before we end this video, so I'm going to add a button. And this time we're going to go into the Control Node menu. Then go into the Base Button menu and find the button here. We could also have just typed button into the search bar and found it right here as well. Finally, we're going to create the button by either clicking Create down at the bottom or double clicking on it. Now we have a button underneath Node 2D. A Node 2D is a general node that controls basic location, rotation, scale, and depth information. It's also a good node to use as a container for all our 2D elements. So we're going to use it as the parent of all our game's nodes. Remember it, because it'll be used pretty often. We also have a button, which is the child of our node 2D right now. You can see it off to the right there. That means it's a child. Buttons are buttons. You click them and things happen. I hope you know how buttons work. I'm going to do a little house cleaning here and organize my project by renaming my nodes. This also makes it easier to code later on. So I'll double click on node 2D and rename it world. Then I'll double click on the button and call it add button. We're going to use underscores instead of spaces whenever we name anything because it makes it easier when we get to coding, and we'll go over why that makes it easier a little bit later. You may have also noticed that the button in the viewer is just this tiny thing in the upper left. I'm just going to click on it and use the transform tool around it to resize it. Just drag those little circle things. And then finally, I'll click and drag it to the middle. Finally, let's test our project by clicking the play button in the upper right up here. Before it plays, a save dialog box is going to pop up because we haven't saved our scene before. You can see unsaved up there. So testing your project is actually a good way to make sure everything's getting saved. Every time you test your project, it's going to save everything within the scene you're testing, including the code. Click yes down at the bottom here, and then click save. We could rename it if we wanted to, but I'm just going to leave the name as is. And there it is. We have a button that we can click. So I'm going to close this window by clicking the X or hitting the stop button in the upper right of Godot up here. Now it's about time to end the video, so I'm going to save everything just to be safe. It's always good to save things. To do this, go to the scene and click Save All Changes, then go to Script, File, Save All. We haven't written any scripts yet, but it's good to get in the habit of clicking both these save buttons before you close, just in case. And that's it for the video. In the next video, we'll start writing our first code and maybe introduce a node or two. Thanks for watching, guys, and great work today.